this is Taylor. Natasha, Tyler, and I were hired by Montgomery Caregivers to create a database-driven web application that allows its employees to keep track of client information, volunteer information, and other related data. With the new database, Montgomery Caregivers employees should be able to schedule events for clients and match clients and volunteers based on certain criteria. For our first milestone, we created a work breakdown structure that divided the database building project into different tasks. Each milestone was allocated one day, and the larger milestones were allocated several days. Each milestone only has 2 tasks: planning what was due for each milestone, and a task for creating the actual milestone. The first task included Tyler, Natasha, and I as resources, and the second task only included one of us for each milestone. Natasha was the resource for creating the work breakdown structure, I was the resource for submitting the scope statement, and Tyler was the resource for the data flow diagram. For milestone 4, all 3 of us were resources for all of the tasks involved.
Tyler Peterson. I'm going to talk about our milestone number 2. Milestone number 2 was a project scope statement. So to walk you through our statement, this was for our Montgomery Caregivers database we were asked to build, and our statement was prepared by myself, Taylor Schreck, and Natasha Schultz. We did this on March 21st, and so our general project information contained project name, which was Client Volunteer Management System. Our sponsor was Jane Doe, and she's the VP of Client Services, and the managers were, like I said, myself, Natasha, and Taylor. Our statement we had for our client was client and volunteer base for Montgomery has expanded largely and outpaced employees' ability to connect clients and volunteers in an orderly and timely fashion. An improved method for performing this process must be found in order to reach company objectives. Our objective for the company was to provide employees with a database-driven web application that allows users to keep track of their information for clients, volunteers, and other related things. This will allow employees to schedule events for clients and match clients and volunteers based on certain criteria. The description of the project was a new information system will be constructed that will collect all volunteer information, client information. This will include basic information on the volunteer and clients, schedule availability, client needs. It will allow for easy searchability, scheduling, and contact. The benefits we were providing for Montgomery Caregivers were improved client to volunteer pairing, improved scheduling, improved record keeping, and improved service searching. Our deliverables we presented Montgomery with were Client Volunteer Management Program, Event Scheduling Program, Client Volunteer Recording Keeping Program, and training procedures. Our expected duration, which came off of our work structure, was 15 weeks. I'm Tyler, and I'm going to discuss our milestone 3. This was our context diagram. As you can see, our database will consist of 2 users, the client and the volunteer, that all interact with our one database, and so information that goes from the client to the database are their general form, their updated info, and task requests. The system then gives the client a task confirmation call. The volunteer has their scheduling and information going into the database, and then the database will then assign a volunteer a task, and as you can see, the volunteer will then accept or decline our task. So this being with our context diagram, Natasha's going to go into our level 1 diagram, which will show a breakdown of more of the tasks that go into the database into more detail.
My name is Natasha Schulteis, and I am presenting the DFD portion of the final project. So some of the user requirements for this application was that it was for the Montgomery Caregivers. It had 2 external agents, the client and the volunteer. The client provides information to the user, who then inputs the information into the database. In order to update any information, they call the user, who then retrieves their file and modifies the information to reflect their new address or whatever they need to change. The other external agent that we had was volunteer, and they have a similar process of inputting their personal information through a user who inputs it to the database, and that's the same way that they make changes to it to modify or delete any information that is necessary. When a client needs assistance, they are able to call and ask the user, who then inputs their task information into the database, in which software allows for a matching, and a list of volunteers is produced who are available at the time. The user then calls each volunteer to confirm whether they can do the task or not, and if the volunteer provides a positive response, then the system is done, and if they provide a negative response, then the user has to go back and pick a user on their own.
My name's Tyler Peterson, and I'm going to start talk about our ERD diagram. So here we are, and we have a total of 6 tables for our database. We have a clients table, appointment ID, task assignment, volunteers, and volunteer availability. In our client table, you can find all basic information on the client, such as first name, last name, phone number, address, gender, birth date they enrolled in our care program, cell phone number, who they live with, who their volunteer is, and their email. This has a direct relationship with the task, and so the task table is any service that they have done. So it shows what the service was, who the client was, the date it was requested and date that service was completed, who requested the task, what time it was at, and the appointment ID. So this can show that each client can have multiple tasks, but only one task can have one client. The task table is connected to our appointment ID table. This is a bridge table that allows us to show who the final volunteer was for each task. The task table is also connected to our task assignment. Our task assignment table shows the possible volunteers who were assigned to this task. So a volunteer can be assigned to multiple tasks. Each task can have multiple volunteers, and so only one volunteer can say yes. However, other volunteers can say no. So this bridge table allows you to see all the volunteers who were assigned to a certain task, and then if they accepted or declined the task. Task assignment table along with appointment ID table, our 2 bridge tables, are connected to volunteer. Here you'll find the basic information on the volunteer, such as first name, last name, phone number, gender, and start date. And then the volunteer table is connected to a volunteer availability table, which shows their scheduling. So a volunteer can be available for multiple dates, and therefore they can be assigned to multiple tasks as well.